Imagine you are a captain and you're on a boat. You have a view like this and you feel yourself accelerating. And if you look at the monitors, nothing's wrong. Could this be real? Is this maybe a cyber attack? Well, let's find out. Welcome to Threat Talks. My name is Lieuwe Jan Koning and the subject of today is Hack the Boat. And we are here guests at Damen Shipyards, which is one of the largest shipbuilders in the world, and we're in their training facility. Let's get on to it. Welcome to Threat Talks. Let's delve deep into the dynamic world of cybersecurity. Let me start by introducing my two guests of today. Hans Quivooij, he is the global CISO of Damen Shipyards. And we've been with the company for more than a decade, 15 years at least.
Yep.
Hans, what did change in the last 15 years from your perspective?
Well, it's probably almost easier to say which hasn't changed. But I think the biggest change would be that 15 years ago, you could still have a vessel which was pretty much disconnected from the outside world. And nowadays, the opposite is what it is. Without any kind of connectivity, you couldn't operate a vessel.
So I'm sure this is good news for hackers. Luca.
Indeed.
Welcome, Luca Cipriano. He is a threat intel specialist at Ontoit. Luca, did you in your life ever build a ship?
Yeah, that's funny. If you would have asked me this a couple of months ago or weeks, I would have never thought you could. I would have said yes, but yeah, actually, I did. Now I did.
You have a special job, I guess. Let's
yes.
Let's find out all about that, gentlemen. Let's see what we will offer the audience today. We're going to talk about cyber issues that are specific to the maritime industry, of course. There's been so many attacks. Only in last year, there were 160 incidents registered by the Maritime Cyber Attack database. So it is certainly on the rise. We're going to talk about spoofing of location. We're going to talk about how to get into ballast systems, and we're going to learn out what that's all about. And hopefully, we will find some solutions or things we can actually do to make sure ships are not running into bridges or lose their cargo. Let's see. Gentlemen, once again, welcome. Hans, maybe let's start a little bit with Damen Shipyards. Like I said in the introduction, it's a really big shipbuilder, right? So can you explain what does Damen do?
Yeah, normally the short answer is I'll explain what we don't do, because we do pretty much everything else. So what we don't do is we don't do the large container vessels. So the one we're talking about, it's not going to be a Damen boat, but that's good. So that's what we don't do. We don't do the bulk carriers, and pretty much everything else we do. So ranging from all the tugs you will see in a harbor. There isn't a harbor in the world where you will not find a Damen vessel. Simple as that. The super yachts, we do those. We also do a very large
for the rich people, like
the very rich one, the 1% of the 1%. I could hook you up, by the way. I saw how Ontoit is doing, so we can talk about that.
I was thinking about buying one, but yeah, maybe
we'll work out a lease or something there. But that's what we do, and obviously another large part, which is growing very expansively the last few years, is of course the defense industry. We are the de facto builder for the Dutch military. So that's what we do as well. So it's pretty
huge project. I mean, it's not like you build a ship like that in weeks or so.
No, that's going to take years. That's like 6 years easily, and quite often even more than that.
You mentioned in the introduction that there's no ship these days that you build that is not in some way online.
Well, you could build a rowboat, of course.
Yeah, but you don't.
No, we don't though.
No. Indeed. So yeah, of course. So the tinier ones, they still float without it.
They still float.
Granted, yeah.
True.
But for security professionals, the easiest way is disconnect everything, air gap it all, and that's a fairy tale these days in the maritime industry. Can you explain a little bit about why are boats connected? What kind of things?
Well, everything is nowadays, of course, connected. It also comes back that everybody is trying to make a vessel as efficiently as possible. And in order to measure efficiency and to steer it, you need to have information. Well, you can't process everything on board, of course. So you need to get data of the vessel. You need to do remote monitoring, because you also want to take into consideration, which might be external data, like the weather data, like weather forecasts and everything there. So that part of the connectivity increases the efficiency of a product, because you can do much more of that, but it also increases the risk.
Yeah. So, and it is in a way, the fact that it's floating, that the ship is floating in the water, it doesn't distinguish it a lot from like an on-site.
No, if you look at it from a very high helicopter view, it could also be a building, for instance, with all sorts of electronics in the building, which is highly automated. A vessel isn't that much different. Obviously, it goes from A to B, and usually you don't see a building doing that. But yeah.
No, that's for sure. That would be
that would be disturbing, unplanned.
Yeah,
would be disturbing in another way. Yeah. So, if you are talking about your job, you need to your job is to secure, of course, the IT environment of Damen Shipyards, but it's also this part. The products you build need to be secure, and that's you mentioned before. This is now a unique selling point almost. It's a feature of a ship that it is more secure.
Yeah, what you will see that it greatly depends on your customer base. What you see is that, especially in areas where there is a lot of legislation, that you will see outside pressure, and also on our customers, that their vessels, just similar as what you would have in some cities where old polluting cars are not allowed to enter a city, you will see that the same is going to apply for vessels, that older vessels are not able to enter certain harbors. So a ship owner wants to have their vessel to be as modern and therefore also as secure quite often. So that's what you see. Obviously, it's not all over the world, so but we have a base level. And since we are one of the few shipbuilders who do series, we can actually continuously improve a series, and we strongly believe in building an excellent service to our customers. That's what we're known of, and especially our solution, which we then call Triton by Damen, is built from the ground up to be as secure as possible. Obviously, we're very much afraid of people like Luca to a certain extent, but that's why we think that we can add value to our customers.
So, how is the maritime industry in that sense different? Because the supply chain is hugely diverse.
So many. The supply chain can be very diverse. If you compare it, for instance, to a car manufacturer, one of the biggest differences is that you might have a different supplier for the same OT part per vessel. Because sometimes it might be that you switch suppliers, or that the customer wants something which is a little bit different. Our vessels aren't completely standardized to a similarity. Like if you buy a BMW, you will have some options which you can check boxes and you will get it, or just any kind of brand. It doesn't really matter, and you know what you get. In our situation, if you buy and you want to have a more advanced firefighting system, we might have to move towards a different supplier because the normal supplier only provides solution X, where you might want solution Y. That has to be integrated, that has to be combined in the systems on board, which adds a lot of complexity, especially since usually those suppliers also maintain their systems.
Yeah. So you're not just bringing an equipment or a hose or whatever on board, but also an IT system.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're like a data center.
It's a floating data center.
Floating data center. Yeah.
We have seen it in the past. For example, we spoke about the solar winds with the supply chain attack, and this kind of needs can introduce a lot of risks, because of course you need to trust the third party. And
but with solar winds, you knew what you're getting into. You know what software runs in your organization, and what if I hear Hans?
We actually had the solar winds. We saw solar winds at the vessel of a customer at a location of ours.
Oh, okay.
So that's a completely different part.
Yeah. But I mean, it's just in relation also, of course, for them it's going to be a little bit different, but you need to trust the third party and then can introduce vulnerability. They can be hacked, for example.
Yeah, and I think the biggest difference for us is if you compare it to traditional IT. A traditional IT, you bring stuff to your location or you connect to a location. At the end of the day, your IT team will guard it and will manage it. They will also, to a very large degree, not of course the full underlying platform, but they will also manage the external solutions there. Mm-hmm. If you look at what happens in shipbuilding, stuff is being brought on board, but it's not being managed by us. It's being managed by the subcontractor. So the supply chain becomes even much more important, and also an additional risk, because you have to rely on them.
Yeah, that's funny that you mentioned it, because like it was now that was public in 2023. There was a military boat from the US, and somebody from the crew nicked in a Starlink antenna without the captain knowing it, because they could watch Netflix or just chat and this kind of things. So that also introduces an extra risk, and that's why the network of the boat needs to be really secure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talking about a backdoor that you have in your... But even you have unwanted backdoors, but most of them over here, you are wanted, or at least...
If you know about them, they could be wanted, because then you could say, okay, if you adhere to this, this, and this. But what can also happen is, for just the sake of the ease of access to the equipment, that somebody from a subcontractor might say, okay, I'm actually going to put a router here. And it will never be out of malicious intent. But it could just be because of the fact that if they forgot to manage it, they forgot to arrange that we provide the connectivity there. So for them, it's just easier to do it like that. Yeah. It's never out of malicious intent.
Mm-hmm. But they are still hooked up probably to your backbone.
They could via the system, definitely. They could be hooked up, yeah. Yeah,
interesting dynamics then. Much different than most organizations face, I think. Let's talk a little bit about Hack the Boat. Luca, you've been trying to do this. You've built a boat. Before we dive into it, really, could you explain? You built something.
Yeah, so we did not really build a real boat, of course, as people can imagine. We built a scale model of a cargo vessel, so that can have containers on it. And what we focused on was the ballast system. So for the people that might not know what a ballast system is, we have a deep dive. So we will do another episode to explain it a bit more in depth. But in short, is what makes sure that the boat stays afloat and is balanced.
Hans, do you ever ship without the ballast system?
No. The moment very simple. The moment you would disconnect from the quay, the vessel would topple.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's quite crucial system.
Yeah, it's crucial.
Okay.
So what we did is it was using real world components that are used normally in boats. Of course, made it a bit simple. For example, we did not put a gyroscope on our boat, but we made it work with the correct PLC and systems that you will see.
PLC?
It's a logic controller that it's used in OT environment, and it is used to for example, in this case, activate and deactivate the pumps for the water, because the ballast system
something of an IP address, you connect to it and that thing opens the valve.
Yeah, it does. It does what it is designed to do based on the software. That
doesn't typically run a endpoint protection.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Clear.
So yeah, the reason why.
But you got actual ones. You got actual PLCs, actual.
Yeah, that's
equipment
the same one. Like
real vessels have.
I don't know if you can see it here in the back, but the screen that is here, then the train that's the same that we have in our boat. So same brand, same thing. So
and then you were targeting the ballast system. You said.
Yeah. That's so we created some scenarios, so we can also organize capture the flag, where people can actually hack into the boat. So we. In this case, voluntarily implanted some vulnerabilities that can be exploited. And as Hans mentioned, like sometimes you have these third parties that need to do. So it's something similar. I don't give away too much, but
we are currently in preparation. By the time we publish this thread talk, we have actually delivered a speech at the One conference, Hans and me, and we are a bit nervous, Hans, that the hack you are going to demonstrate there live on stage.
That's actually a Damen vessel.
A Damen vessel
in the background, yes. For the people that cannot see because they're listening to it, just go on YouTube and look. But we have like boats around us.
Yeah, and I'm with my back in the direction where we're. Are we heading somewhere?
Yeah, that's.
Are we floating adrift? I don't know.
Rotterdam.
Yeah, so we are hopefully something goes wrong during the demonstration.
So we
in the right way.
In the right way, it needs to go wrong in the right way. So what we aim to do is just capsize the boat, tilt it in a way that the container will fall in the water, and this is something that can happen in a real case scenario.
Happened last week, huh? Something like that.
Yeah, in Rotterdam.
Yeah, right in there, by that bridge there. Yeah. So we did this because, of course, as Hans mentioned before, like IT and OT environment are more connected nowadays, and the OT infrastructures lack a lot of security. So it is easy to interact with the components because there's no encryption, there's no content check, so that's more difficult to secure them.
Yeah. Okay. So we were talking about the one conference. Let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, a couple of months ago we said, hey, why don't we hack an actual boat? So we collaboratively, and we said, Hans, can you deliver a boat? And then.
Well, I was planning on saying yes, but you couldn't afford one. Even you weren't even able to rent one for a week. So yeah.
Yeah, true. So what we did, we asked someone to give us a shopping list so we could build something ourselves. And yes. I remember that. So we sent that to you, Hans, didn't we?
Yeah, you did. And I received a shopping list which listed a kiddie pool, which listed I don't know, a whole bunch of stuff you would almost get at a toy store. And I made the error of not actually reading the attachment where it said a kiddie pool. And I forwarded it internally to somebody from our services department. And can you please help me out? We're doing this. We're hosting we're doing an event. So it's going to be very important. And the initial reaction was, yeah, sure. And then about 10 minutes later, I got a response. I actually read the attachment you sent me. And no, we are not going to supply you with a kiddie pool. Just have somebody go to the nearest Intertoys or whatever and get it yourself, or have them get it.
Yeah, imagine you work at Damen Shipyards and you deal with potential customers all the time. And then there's like, yeah, could you build me this multi-billion-dollar super yacht? And then could you get me this small pipe?
I guess we sent some the PVC pipes,
PVC pipes.
Exactly.
Everything, the stuff we don't use for a boat.
No, exactly, that we needed. That's funny because when I came here for the first time, I said, that's what we needed, but it was big and in iron, that was not going to work for us.
We're not going to do a ballast system in the rain pipe you use.
No.
Yeah, we still need to be able to carry it into the swimming pool because that's also in your bucket.
And it is already heavy. I mean, not too much, but still. So could you imagine iron and with a huge? No, that was not going to work.
So we're going to put a swimming pool on stage.
Yeah, we're gonna organize a swimming pool, of course, through a company, and of course,
swimming pool as a service.
Swimming pool as a service, exactly. Also, because as you can imagine, there's gonna be like our model is 3.5 meters, so you need a big swimming pool, and you can imagine that all that water you don't fill it and empty it in 5 minutes.
I also don't think the stage would hold it actually. The weight,
no, probably not.
Could be a thing as well.
You wouldn't do it on the first floor for sure.
Yeah, we'll demonstrate it somewhere outside and have a live video screen, and then we'll hopefully you succeed in making sure that we lose a little bit of the containers. And lose the cargo. Yeah, exactly. Hey, how was it as an IT person to get your hands dirty?
That was fun. I had help with Jeroen. We're gonna speak about it in the deep dive as well. We had to do some PVC gluing, cleaning, and some soldering. So we smelled a lot of funny stuff, and it was like a bit of a headache. But we had a lot of fun, laughing a lot, as you can imagine.
Can imagine, especially the glue part.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So that was
in
fun.
The deep dive. We're going to talk about a fire also.
Yes.
Hear about that.
Yeah, he knows. We had a.
Okay. Hey, let's quickly go to the other. Angle of attack, I would say.
Yes.
In the introduction, I talked about, hey, what if my boat suddenly increases in speed? So someone is meddling with the engine. Have you explored that?
Yeah. And I mean, this is similar to what we just talk about with the ballast, because still it's an OT system, and the same thing, it is interacting with the propulsion engine, and as you can imagine, if you manage to get into the boat and interact with maybe you could stop the boat, or you could speed up the boat while probably the monitoring doesn't show that the speed up, and as you can imagine, the boat could go against the bridge, or for example,
we've seen that happen, of course.
Yeah, we've seen that happen in the US, or for example, it could, if you start only one engine on the left, you could, twist it, put it sideways
in a canal. Something like that.
We have seen that as well. Yeah, so it stopped the boat for quite a long time. That was really difficult to put it straight again. So all these kind of things can go wrong.
Honestly, I feel a little bit like we're turning.
Yes, we are. It's not my fault, huh?
Not yet.
Not yet.
So you claim, yeah. So that's another. But from a technical perspective, it's similar. That's what you're saying.
From a technical
the ramifications are completely different.
Yes, indeed. But still, we are interacting with components like PLCs and just sending signals to interact. So, the thing is like hacking into IT systems and hacking OT systems is a bit different. So, for example, IT system can be complex because you need a vulnerability, or you need to understand how a protocol works really well, or something to exploit, but it is well documented. We all know the protocols that they exist, and there's write-ups or these kind of things. You can find it online really easily. Hacking OT system, it is not easy for that because it's less documented. So you need to really study how the underlying system works. But once you're in the network, it's just sending packets and it just works. You just need to know which bits and bytes to manipulate in order to get what you achieved. And we have, like, for example, threat actors like from the US set up from China. APT40 is the China Nexus. They were doing espionage and stealing intellectual property on how submarines and boats were built. So that could be also a way to get insight on how an underlying system works and exploit it. Then it's easier.
Yeah, or pirates, which we will find out in the next one. But let's first do a treasure hunt. You often have a treasure hunt in Threat Talks, and you can win a cool T-shirt. Actually, the T-shirt similar to what Luca is currently wearing.
A fresh one, I hope.
With a different
guaranteed. Yeah,
person as well. Yeah,
we'll get one for you as well.
Oh wow.
There's a code. It's now on screen. It's 102401, and send it to code@threat-talks.com. If you're within the first 200 people who do so, then we'll ship you one of those T-shirts in a nice box, and indeed very clean. Go for it.
I will wash it before.
So I mentioned pirates. They also so we explored different things. The assignment initially was broad. Make sure we hack a boat somehow. Let's demonstrate this. And it turns out it's not just about itself that you can hack, but also a thing called the AIS system. There's going to be a deep dive about it.
Yeah, there's going to be a deep dive about it.
Fun fact. So this didn't make it in the final presentation. Well, very briefly in the final, but we're not going to demonstrate this at the one conference. Why, Luca?
Well, I mean, we have only limited amount of time for the presentations, and I believe it's more visually impact the ballast system and the engine, of course. We decided to go that direction because otherwise it would have taken too long.
You also told me it's too easy.
It's too easy. Yeah. Well, I mean,
so tell me what happens here. What is AIS first of all?
So the AIS is automatic identification system. Probably Hans knows really well.
Hans, a little bit about it. AIS is one of those.
Yeah, it's somewhere here. Yeah, correct.
We have it here.
Yeah, we have it on board.
So what does it do?
It basically shows the location of the vessel, and all vessels above a certain size are obliged to have one. And to also use it. It's similar to what you see in airplanes, of course, where sometimes you will also hear that sometimes a private jet might actually try to limit that transponder. Unfortunately, within the vessels, you will also see that sometimes out of all sorts of intent, could be somebody with a super yacht who really doesn't want to be tracked, or that there might be some more nefarious activities that they can spoof, or they can falsify, or actually turn off the system. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
But it's a beaconing system. You emit a radio wave.
Yeah,
you emit a radio wave.
Yeah, it's VHF, so it's really high, very high frequencies. Then you have some components that get the signal, and in the signal you have information about, for example, the name of the vessel, how fast it moves, the direction that it's going, all these kind of things.
Yeah. So in the deep dive, we're going to talk about how to spoof this, how to abuse the system, because it turns out it's not all that really created with security in mind.
No.
Put it mildly. Huh?
It's an old system already. So
yeah, 1997.
Yeah,
it's not that old.
Well, in IT.
Yeah.
Yeah, but by 1997 we knew about how important encryption was. Huh? For example,
certain parts.
An identity. Yeah,
true.
But anyway.
Yeah. I guess also that was supposed to be a lightweight system that you can just not too complex that could be used. But
how do pirates use it?
Yeah, we for example, they can track the boats that they want to attack. But some things that you can do also is like create a ghost vessel, and you can create more ghost vessel to, for example, make a boat go in a certain direction where then the pirates could attack.
Because the idea is that on my AIS system, there would be a vessel and I would try to avoid it?
You, of course, especially if you're a big vessel and you have limited mobility, then of course you
I take a right or what's that, starboard?
Yeah, I would That's funny because I had to learn about port and starboard, and it took me so long to remember which one is port and which one is starboard. And now I remember that port is left and starboard is right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay, good.
So we go starboard then, and there's the pirate. So that's how they do this, huh?
That's one of the ways
very
that
short
they can
version
do
of
that.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we've also seen situations in let's keep it in the area somewhere in the east of Europe, where we see vessels which are all of a sudden appearing at a different location. So this is something which is not new, not just by the pirates used around.
Could lead to international conflict.
Definitely.
Or also disappearing if they want to, like if they have an embargo or something and they need to
100%
go through. So
true.
Yeah, or a fisher boat that gets into territory where they are not allowed to fish, right?
Yeah.
And then come back and then emit the next signal.
There's a lot of ways.
Yep.
So we can't. We should come up with a better system then, or extend it somehow. I'm sure we're going to talk about it in detail.
Yes.
Gentlemen, I'd like to talk a little bit about solutions to this. In general, to how we, there's a lot of OT. We're talked about, maybe briefly, Luca, what is so difficult about securing OT devices compared to IT? I mean, your laptop, we kind of figured out what to do, right?
Indeed. For OT, the problem is how the protocol is designed. It's like that you should change the protocol itself to make it more secure. So that's why we need to define different angles to make sure that it doesn't get exploited. And we have ways like, for example, also both should be designed with a zero trust concept, like microsegmentations, and make sure that only certain traffic goes in the direction that it is supposed to go. Of course, also both should have like patching of the systems in mind, so don't leave vulnerabilities.
True.
Control what kind of devices, like no Starlink repeaters on the boat. That's an extra access point. So all these kind of things we need to think about.
It can be done though. I remember I was with John Kindervaart, who created Zero Trust once at Siemens, where they have, and that's where Stuxnet happened, huh? Yeah. So they're really aware. It struck me how advanced they think about zero trust and how to they pair every piece of control logic, so their PLC, with some kind of security device in whatever form. So they get a very small perimeter. So one. In zero trust terms, we would say protect service. One device is actually a protect service, and then they control all the traffic that gets in and out. They have a hard time selling it because it's more expensive, of course, and nobody does that. Huh? Nobody wants that somehow. Sometimes you get a feeling things have to go wrong.
Yeah, that's always like that. Like,
what do you think about that? Do you have an opinion on that, Hans?
I have two opinions on that one. I'm not sure I'm going to share both. But you could be right. No, obviously, well, at the end of the day, what I think the root cause for that people aren't interested is they're not aware. You mentioned in the intro the number of security incidents we've had, or which were being registered in the maritime industry, or something like a few hundred. Mm-hmm. If you look at it from a helicopter view, that's nothing, basically. The reality is, of course, that the number is going to be much higher because we don't know. And the reality is also that it's definitely going to change because there will be more Starlinks, there will be everything much more on a vessel. So I think we're trying to catch up. And you mentioned that we know how to protect a laptop. Yeah, but that's what we've been doing for the last 30 years. And if you look at that, if you look towards the OT, and especially the OT on board, but it's probably it's not just on board, we're catching up. We had a late start. Which means that in the next few years, there's going to be a tectonic shift there, and you will see a kind of like a rat race going on because there will be incidents. That's something which is a certainty. We don't know how much, but there will be. But you will also see that the regulation is catching up, that the shipbuilders are catching up, that the customers are going to demand it. Where now they might sometimes be blissfully unaware. They don't really know. Oh, I need to take cybersecurity into consideration because I have a boat. That is usually something which the boring guys at the office do. So it will change, and it will change eventually for the better. The question is, of course, how quick is that going to change? And the kind of like the rat race with let's say our adversaries. How quickly are they going to evolve?
With the change?
Exactly.
Well, luckily, according to Luca, you need to know a lot about the specific environment. But that, I mean, once that's out,
you can also figure it out. I mean, there are ways like to figure it out, because if you have, for example, a monitoring system that is accessible, you can reverse engineer how they're getting the signals. So there are ways also to.
And once you know the logic of one, you can apply it to many other vessels or many other OT systems. So,
yes.
Yeah, well, Stuxnet again. I mean, that happened offline, and they figured out how to change the temperature of the cooling system.
But that's the thing. Like that could happen also in a vessel, because you don't necessarily need a hands-on keyboard or somebody doing something. You can just have a malware which is programmed to do certain things at a certain time if you know already the environment and what you need to change. So then it could be also automatic that something happened. So
Hans, in the industry, we need to. You mentioned there's lots of supply chain involved, so lots of stuff you are not aware of, don't really control. Now you are with a huge company, so you have power when you're talking to the supplier.
Some power. We don't have unlimited power, of course, but yeah.
Yeah, but more than
definitely much more than a smaller shipyard. And even for us, we might be up to with certain suppliers who are bigger than we. So even our influence is limited. But yes, we have the luxury that we do repeat vessels. So and we have a very broad product scope. So we have the luxury of can be a little bit more demanding towards our vessels. And on the other end, which is also that due to the fact that as a big company, that our focus is on providing the best vessels. So for us, adding a cybersecurity to our vessels is also eventually is going to be a selling point.
Damen has the luxury of having a security team that's
exactly
constantly at.
Yeah, we have Triton Guard, which provides a much safer way of interacting with a vessel remotely, which we also supply to our customers. So we see this as the future. Not necessarily is this going to be the main selling point of our vessels, but it's definitely going to add in the whole proposition.
Is there also, I mean...
But we need, and sorry to interrupt you, Lieuwe, but this can only be done in strong cooperation with our supply chain, with our partners. Parties like Ontoit, but also other parties, also the vendors are the designers of the PLCs we use on board, because they might have to change stuff. Exactly like Luca was saying.
It costs money as well. So
at the end of the day, it's all going to cost money.
Yeah.
So true. Yeah.
Yeah, so it is an ecosystem that needs to be somehow done. And you as a large player, can do your own influence on the market. Would it help if there was, I mean, in other industries, there's regulations, like PCI DSS in finance. So it's really strict there. The maritime sector has a lot of other kind of regulations.
You see it happening now, where definitely the maritime industry has always been very strong on safety. Obviously, the cybersecurity safety wasn't a part of it. And what you will see now that over the last couple of years, you will see that there's a big change there. And that's for the better. It doesn't go as far as they stipulate what you guys in the executive order of the US, where Zero Trust was mentioned. That's not there yet. But you definitely see them stepping up. So there will be changes there in the future, but they're not there yet. So you can't use that as either a stick or a carrot. Well, you can use it as a carrot, of course, and saying we have to adhere it in the future, but then people will see it as a stick.
That will be also a solution for the economic problem if it costs money and nobody's willing to put the money, make it a compliance requirement, and then suddenly...
Certainly. And then, of course, what you will see happening is that in the maritime sector, those legislation is quite often done per flag-bearing country. So meaning that if your vessel is registered, for instance, in Panama, it has to adhere to the standards which apply in Panama. And that would mean...
So please, a worldwide standard.
Yeah, that's what you want. And that's going to take time. That's not going to happen overnight, because eventually you will see that those vessels will be banned from entering certain harbors. So it will... But there isn't a global standard to which every country immediately adheres. They have to translate it into local legislation. So yeah,
but legislation in general will help. Huh?
Certainly.
We did an episode of Threat Talks the other day about the security and compliance and how they should be strengthen each other instead of the other way around. So that's important for this one as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
We talked about different industries as an inspirator here. Is there other things that we can learn from more highly regulated or maybe industries that are much more used already to combating these kind of attacks?
I think we can probably learn something from every industry which uses PLCs, which uses OT. And I would much rather cherry pick than saying this is one industry where we can copy everything from, because that's probably not going to happen. That's not going to be applicable. But you will have their great ideas or their best practices. You could apply those. I prefer cherry picking, to be honest, in this one.
Maybe in the future we're gonna go doing something else for sure.
Hospitals?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
Knows? Yeah.
We started something.
Yeah. Would be cool.
Do you have one final pro tip, Hans, for people in your position?
Don't? No. The pro tip is collaboration. Collaboration with both the security specialists, companies like Ontoit, but also your suppliers. Make certain that all the suppliers, all the subcontractors, that they know you, that you know them, and that you work with them and not against them. And that's what you sometimes will see. For whatever reason, might be a difference in maturity, but because your supply chain is going to be your weak link, but it can also be your strength if you have the right partnerships. So yeah.
Great advice. Thank you very much. Before we wrap it up, if you like what you see here or you want to participate in a hack event like this, I have good news for you, because on October 15th in our European headquarters in the Netherlands, we have an event. It's called the Hacker Talent event. So if you want to learn all about this or experience it, look at our website, ontoit.net. And before I let you go, please, if you could like this video, because it allows us to spread the word further so more people can enjoy it. And if you want to see the deep dives or the next main episodes, also subscribe and click the bell for the notification so you will know next time when it's there. It's every Tuesday that we ship one. We'd love to hear your feedback. team@threat-talks.com. And if you have feedback for us, we will typically also award this with a t-shirt like Luca has. So that's another chance if you forgot the code or forgot to write it down. And here from Damen Shipyards headquarters in a simulator on the River Maas in Rotterdam, we thank you very much for your for tuning in to us, and we hope to see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to Threat Talks, a podcast by Ontoit Cybersecurity and AMS-IX. Did you like what you heard? Do you want to learn more? Follow Threat Talks to stay up to date on the topic of cybersecurity.